Hey folks, welcome back to WarThunder. Today's video is just going to be a mishmash of clips from around 3 hours of sim gameplay I got last night. Testing out the new BR ranges for sim enduring confrontation and basically just trying to get some good games in with the Javelin, or at least some good engagements. I managed to get the fire streaks, and I didn't ever actually get the chance to fire them at anyone. The radar kind of it overwhelms you a bit, to put it bluntly. I mean, it's definitely a useful tool, but it kind of doesn't help in the way that you'd want it to. Like it tells you how many targets are in your frontal 180-degree arc and the rough distances to them, but because you have to point at them to really be able to tell where you need to be looking, it's actually difficult to find the dots once you've had them marked. Normally how I would play before the radar was added is that I would head in the direction that I thought a target might be, and then I would alter my course by like 30-45 degrees so that I wasn't flying directly at where I thought I'd encounter contact, because it's much easier to scan when you're looking at the side of the plane than the front, because there's not as much obstructions from the canopy or the structural stuff. You know, the open side of it is much clearer and you get a wider field of view. But with radar, you know that there's something there, so your mind's telling you that the finding it part is done already. Like you just know that it's there. You just have to fly in that direction and you'll find it, easy peasy, right? Well, it's not that simple. It doesn't work like that in sim, because you still have to find the spec, and you can't just fly around spamming whatever you've bound the target lock button to, because it'll only lock basically exactly what your crosshair is pointing at under 4 kilometers. So the chance of you finding something by accident by just spamming a key is very slim. So radar only really helps people that already know what they're doing, and it doesn't actually help them as much as you'd expect, because you still have to visually acquire the target. All it does is tell you that there's a target there to visually acquire, and a lot of the time when you were playing before, you'd have been far more aware and far more alert of your own surroundings, and you'd have been manually scanning for all this stuff anyway, and if it was close enough to have been a threat to you and to have required engagement, you would have found it. So I don't actually think it's going to change the game as much as we thought, but time will tell. And from these clips, most of them are live comms. You might have heard me talking in the background in the actual game. I'm going to have to mute the game volume or turn it down a lot for this commentary section. But anyway, before we get into that, the new Enduring Confrontation BR ranges are I think 6.7 to 7.7 and 8.0 to 10.0. So obviously this is an 8.0 to 10.0, so I've brought out the Medium Arcade G41K as my starting plane. It's basically stock. I don't really have many 8.0s for Britain, because they were always horrifically uncompetitive messes, and I didn't get into sim until around a year ago. So all of these planes already, my experiences or my I don't know how to really describe it, to be honest. What I thought of them is mostly left over from my experience of them in RB, where they'd always go up tiered and be terrible, and therefore ignored. So a lot of them are stock. So the only good planes I actually have for Britain are the Venom and the Hunter, but they're expensive to crew and they're in a different crew slot, so I'm having to use stock shitty 8.0s to get enough points for the Javelin. Interestingly, you only need 220 spawn points for a 9.0 in this new 8.0-10.0 system, which means that you can literally, well, if the game gives you a starting 200 spawn points, which it's supposed to do, quite often it doesn't. I think in this game it didn't give me anything, which is why I'm capping the zone, because they give you quite a lot. Killing that guy at the start gave me 147, but if it gives you the 200 that it should, then you can literally just kill one howitzer and that will give you enough spawn points to top you over 220 and let you spawn a 9.0. So spawn an 8.0 for free, go kill a howitzer, go back and spawn a 9.0. Jobs are good and it's that easy. So at least in terms of trying to get Javelin footage, this new system works out pretty well. Otherwise I'd have had to do a lot more to get the spawn points for it, and dying would have been a lot more annoying. The spawn timer has also been changed, because I think it used to be 20 minutes for a 9.0, 25 for a 9.7, and 30 for a 10.0. Now it's, at least for the 9.0, it's only 5 minutes, or maybe it's 10, I think it's 10 minutes. So when you die in the Javelin, 10-minute wait isn't half as bad as like the 20 it used to be. And quite often if you've got a kill or two, then you'll have already made enough spawn points to get it back again straight away. Like, I never had the issue where I'd have to go and fly out just to get the points. And what used to happen is that you would get enough points to spawn your top BR vehicle, and then once you'd spent them on spawning it, you'd have used them all, and that would have been it. You'd have had none again. So with it, you'd have had to earn enough to get it again in the half an hour it took for the cooldown after you died. And that used to be honestly quite annoying and quite challenging. So now it's not as bad. However, I do feel as though having to fight the AI is kind of worse than it was, because the AI used to have a mix of like 7.0 to 9.0 max aircraft, and now they basically seem to start with 9.0s and go right the way up to 10.0. So I've seen AI flying around in T2s, and they can spawn them immediately, because AI don't have the spawn point system. So they can literally, at the very start of the game, when you're in your 8.0 or less, to not have to pay spawn points to spawn it, they'll be flying around in the best thing that there is, and it's that's honestly the worst imbalance right now. And I always thought it was. I never used to think that it was particularly bad having to deal with having a low BR plane fighting against top BR stuff, because there's enough stuff on the ground like AI howitzers and stuff and cap zones for you to make the spawn points without actually having to engage any other players. And the low BR stuff is actually very easy to avoid being killed by the top BR stuff, because their closure rate is so high. All you have to do is keep your head on a swivel, and as soon as you see someone coming for you, you just turn, and it's almost impossible for them to hit you, especially if you're at low altitude, because they just risk crashing. But anyway, I think I've rambled on for enough. We've got the Javelin now, so from here on in, I'll just cut to the live comms, and we'll see how it goes. Nigel's very low down. Shut the canopy. Shut out some of that engine noise. Hold the brakes on. Let's see how high the throttle can get before we start moving. Can't even hold at 80%. Well, that's bad. I'm not going to use reheat. Oh my god, it lifts off like crazy. Right, we need to build speed up quite badly. I'm gonna get up to like, well, I don't know actually. I don't know what best way to use the radar. I don't know if there's any like little intricacies to it or not. Like, did something just attack this runway? Let's boot the radar up and have a look. 2 dots. They will be our friendly AI that guard the runway. Someone said something about changing. There we go. To use this scale instead. Did I change the tracking beam? Yeah, I narrowed it. Oh, there it is, look. But what is it? I'm gaining on it, whatever it is. Some sort of jet bomber? It's gotta be AI. It is. That wasn't really a very good test of radar. I'd have had to really try hard not to kill him. Honestly, I think that would probably have been easier to not use the radar gun sight. Is there any objectives in the air? No, there isn't. Although, that runway apparently just got bombed again. How far away do we reckon that is? So there's 3 dots. 2 of those I'm guessing will be the runway AI again. And the one opening a gap is probably the bomber. But who the fuck knows? Lower it down to the 20-kilometer scale again. So the bomber's running west. More dots are appearing though. Something's close. That's got to be 5 kilometers. On the deck. I can see something on the deck in front. Very close now. That's friendly. Well, that's very clearly an enemy because it's been shot at by the AA. Twin-engined. This might be our R2Y2 friend from earlier. It was. So that was quite... gunsight definitely came in there. Question is, if he goes down, will the credit go to me or the runway AAA? Let's lock him up again and try again. Oh, bad. Oh my good god, the fucking Javelin's still a piece of shit. I thought I was gonna rip my flaps off, but no, I ripped the entire fucking wing off instead. Motherfucking Jesus. Alright, so after that, I kind of started concentrating a bit more to stop the plane from tearing itself apart. And I found myself not really talking as much when I was watching the recordings back through, so I thought I'd just continue to add thoughts over these last few clips. Nothing long-winded now, it's just like 20-second or less clips of getting kills with the gun sight. And all but one are on the new Vietnam map, which was long overdue. Not the location per se, but this is the first enduring confrontation map that isn't basically flat everywhere. It has a lot of really nice terrain variation where there's lots of up and down, lots of hills, lots of valleys, like you just saw there. You can break line of sight with radar locks, and if you fly low, then you can actually stop people from being able to detect you on radar. So I think it's clear that they've added this map now to coincide with the release of radar, so that people can actually mask their approach to objectives and stuff. Because if you want to be able to pick someone up in one of those valleys, then you're going to have to scan from really high altitude, so that you can scan downwards on them and, you know, negate the hills and shit. One thing I have noticed about the Javelin, they seem to have given it the same kind of flight performance as the other supersonics, which I don't mean obviously in terms of speed and whatever else, but it kind of power slides through the air now, whereas before it didn't. You can pull beyond your ideal angle of attack, and it causes you to bleed speed insanely fast. So if you pull back on the stick fully, you can go from full speed to like sub 200 miles an hour before you've even done a 180-degree turn. You'll literally bleed off 400 plus miles an hour just turning around if you don't do it gradually. And that's very much like the other top tier jets, and it's not how the Javelin was before. It used to bleed speed, but it used to bleed speed roughly the same as the other top tier. Well, I say top tier, I'm stuck in the olden days. It used to bleed speed in the same sort of manner as the 9Os, let's say, which it is one of, but obviously it was given to us as part of a tier 6 supersonic pack, so you know, it kind of feels better now, especially at low speed. I've actually tested this, and with landing flaps down, you can keep the nose up at 80 miles an hour, which is the takeoff speed for a Spitfire, to give you some reference. And that's an early Spitfire as well, like the Mark 1A or the 2B. So it has very nice stall characteristics now. You can kind of just pop landing flaps, air brakes, let stuff overshoot you, and just sort of float around. It's almost Harrier VTOL-esque in the you can just float and line up and kill stuff whilst you're barely moving. I've got some pretty dirty kills doing that, but for some bizarre reason I couldn't find them in the footage. Otherwise I'd have popped them up right now as an example. Anyway, this is the last kill of the game, so after this the video will end. Probably one of the few chances that I've had to test the gun sight properly in a head-on. Well, sort of a head-on, but the guy was stalling out, and I think it was actually AI, but either way it felt pretty satisfying. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more, leave me a like, a comment, subscribe and all that crapola, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. Cheers.